Hi there, welcome to Music Ally Focus with me, Music Ally's editor, Joe Sparrow. And this episode is one in our series of podcasts that is investigating ethics and responsibility in the music industry. And this is also an episode that comes with a content warning. This podcast will discuss themes of sexism and misogyny and sexual assault. We're talking to Dorothy Carvello, a highly successful veteran of the music business, who began her career in 1987 as an assistant to Ahmet Ertegun, the Atlantic Records founder, and went on to become the label's first female A&R executive. She also worked for Atlantic, RCA, and Columbia. With this vast experience in mind, we've invited her onto the podcast to talk about her latest focus, that is, helping survivors of sexual abuse in the music industry. Now, what is this Focus podcast? Well, Music Ally, as you may know, provides an analysis-rich guide and a contextual guide to the music business, and each of these focus episodes analyzes one meaningful music business story at a time, just like this one. And in this show specifically, we're discussing the ethical responsibility of the music industry to protect women in it from sexual assault and abuse. In 2018, Dorothy Carvello published her memoirs called Anything for a Hit, an A&R woman's story of surviving the music industry, which documented her experiences dealing with the excesses, egos, and worst impulses of a male-dominated music industry. Now, she's launched the Face the Music Now Foundation with the stated aim of, quote, exposing the reality of what has been going on in the industry for decades and demanding accountability, but also paving the way for survivors to tell their stories and reclaim their lives. So, of course, that's what we wanted to talk to her about, and here she is. And it's a discussion that will make you pause for thought. So, Dorothy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump straight into this. You say you want to expose the reality of what's been going on in the industry for decades. To use that as an introduction so everyone can understand exactly what it is you're trying to do, what is that reality?
The reality of the music business, we have two music businesses, one for men and one for women. And we have to make it where for years, even happening today, and we'll get into that later, female artists and female executives and female producers and musicians, the minute you walk into a studio, an office, there are comments of, and I'm not talking about comments, you look great today, I like your dress, is that Prada? I'm talking about degrading, sexual comments, in some cases, sexual battery, sexual assault, rape. And this has been going on for years, and it's been a collusion of when I was in the business working in a company, the big six record companies down to the big three. And we have to stop this conspiracy, which is really what it is, to protect predators and allow women to be held back on a socio and economic level in the corporation and in the industry itself, either as a musician or as a producer. Less opportunities for women, more for men.
This is obviously, as you're describing it, a huge problem, and one that has been, as you're putting it, enabled by the industry, the structure of the industry and people in it and the businesses that comprise it as well. So how has the industry enabled this behavior and how has it covered it up?
Okay, it enables the behavior on the record company level to allow the predator to commit an offense against a female, and then he continues on with his career, and the woman who makes the complaint about this man is usually fired. They cover it up through NDAing women that complain about sexual assault, battery, or rape at a company. The NDA prohibits the women from ever speaking about it. She receives a settlement, but the settlement is such a pathetic pittance compared to the money that the men makes. Now, for instance, I have knowledge that right now we have several men running operated companies that have committed these sexual offenses against women, and the company has protected them through this NDA. And the concept was even explained to me by one of the press people that works for one of the major labels. This person said to me, well, who are we going to get to run record companies if we don't have these men? That's bullshit, because at the end of the day, it might be show business, but business is still in the monicum. It is a business. And at the end of the day, that's all these people care about, is the earning of money. And I believe that you can have both. You can earn money, and you can have a man run a company that doesn't behave this way, because there are many that don't behave this way.
We'll talk about the launch of your foundation, which is the Face the Music Now Foundation, which is about exposing this behavior and what's going on, and also providing support and associated things. There's some statistics on the website which describe the scale of the problem. 72% of female musicians report discrimination. 67% report that they've been a victim of sexual harassment. 85% of victims of harassment didn't report it due to the industry culture. Now, this is, based on those statistics, this is endemic, overwhelming. It feels like, talking to people that within the industry, that we're sort of waiting for an equivalent Me Too wave to break within the music industry. We've not seen anything of the scale or impact of what we've seen, for instance, in the movie industry. So you were talking about the protectionism within the industry. Why have we not seen that wave break of Me Too in the music industry yet?
This is the biggest question that I always get, and it's two parts, if you bear with me. Part number one is, until really this year, all of the companies, most of them have been going public. They were privately held companies with the exception of Sony. Now that these companies, the other two, are public, they have to answer to boards of directors. And still they're protecting and covering up. But now I have a way, when I can investigate these stories, to get them out into the media, and to also do shareholder activism, which I've bought stock in each company, and I will be asking to speak at each meeting. And let's bring up these issues to the board of directors. Board of directors no longer have place to hide in this world. They receive large money. They can be held now personally responsible for the actions of a predator. So I am trying to just sound the wave on that aspect. On the other side, let's take, for instance, I was contacted in the past week from two female artists. A sexual battery was committed on both of them. Sexual battery is groping the genitals, the breasts, constant sexual harassment from the chairman of the company, chasing after them, begging them for marriage, even though the person is married, begging them for sex. These are girls, young women in their 20s, okay? The predator has a history of this abuse. He's in his 60s. There has been no repercussions for this man for years in the music business. Everybody covers up for him. So the young women say to me, they tell me these stories. Luckily, there are iPhones around today, so people can hit record to have complete home run evidence of this. So when I give my suggestions of what can be done, including filing criminal charges against this person, and maybe that's what we need, somebody coming out in handcuffs that the media and the rest of the industry could see, a man cuffed for this behavior, not rewarded, given another label deal, a bonus, more stock options, which is what happens. They're scared shitless, these women. They're scared because they fear blackballing. And we've had no men running companies today, operating companies, stand up from any of the labels and say, if you've been sexually harassed or abused and you want a label deal, come to my company. We welcome you with open arms, because we don't tolerate that shit here. So everybody's like, ooh, when is it going to happen? It's not a question of if it happens, it's when. And that's what the foundation will be bringing. So the women are not supported. They're not supported by the women in the music business, and they're not supported by the men in the music business. So change has to come from the outside, and I will affect the change through the shareholder activism. I will start hitting these companies in the wallet where it counts. And also the other problem we have, these companies, even though they're global companies, they're set up, each territory has different laws. We need law firms in these countries to step up and help these women. And female artists should not be discouraged by their management oh, you're going to lose your deal, you're going to lose this. Stand up so the next young woman isn't abused or raped or tortured by one of these men. And people have to have courage. So I'm using this platform and the shareholder activisms to start writing letters, speaking at the meetings, and holding, if the board of directors personally, accountable for the men who are running these companies' behavior, because they will not change. They're aware of all of this shit. I've spoken to all of them. They're looking for stuff in my background to use against me. Bring it. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not the problem. And no 20-year-old woman, young woman should have to say, if I speak up, I'm afraid my career will be over. All of this that I worked so hard for will be gone. That's morally wrong. And it's bad business. Me Too is bad for the bottom line. And companies need to wake up and start realizing that.
Can you foresee a sort of moment, like a hypothetical tipping point, if you like, that might move that needle? Or is it going to be a sort of gradual process, with the work your foundation is doing, with activism and things like that?
We hear many big superstar artists complain about abuse, but they never name the abuser. We need women to name their abuser in public and let it play out. But in the meantime, it will be a gradual process. But now, with all of the three major labels publicly traded, they have to answer to the shareholders. Like, instead of worrying about, I'm a shareholder, you work for me. These men and women work for me. They need to be transparent, okay? And also, through shareholder activism, you can ask for that transparency. So I see it being gradual. Women are coming in every day. Currently, women are coming in from the past with complaints. Laws in America are changing. New York State, we have the Adult Survivors Act, just passed the New York State Senate. If it passes the New York State Assembly, it will give a 2-year look-back window for a woman to make an abuse claim against anybody at any company, even if it took place 50 years ago. California has the same bill before their legislature. Their sessions are a little bit more later in the year. So if we have one of those laws passed this year or next year, that's going to be an influx of more women complaining, more of these men being held accountable financially, and that will help as well. But it is a process because women in this business, unlike actresses, they're independent contractors. Women are tied to the corporation here as artists for 7 to 10 years. And also we have all these managers, instead of standing up for what's right, no, your career will be hurt. They discourage the artists to speak up, and they're just helping foster this 1950s culture, and it's wrong. There's strength in numbers. And if we get some laws changed, women will feel more confident. But the women really are shell-shocked in the music business. It's like the mob. These record companies act like we're Cosa Nostra, and it's an omerta. And if you speak up, you're going to get a horse's head in your bed. So
let's talk about the roots of that behavior then. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll is a shorthand for the music industry, that, or at least parts of it, that is considered desirable in some respects, whether it's visible behavior of rock stars or whether it's the sort of dream of that behavior behind the scene. Is that a part of the problem, that the music industry is sort of seen as this alternative world where this kind of behavior is not just possible but sort of encouraged and implicit in it? And if so, how do we change that so that from the public's perspective and the people working in it, so that we have a healthier environment?
We cannot have this whole sex, drugs, rock and roll culture in a publicly traded company. Bad for business, okay? Adults should not be grown men in bands having women line up to give them oral sex. It's actually gross, it's passé, and I hope that, people no longer do it and it's not allowed. But we have to have people answer. Nobody answers for anything.
And to jump in here, if you're finding this conversation useful and you'd like more of this kind of in-depth news and trusted analysis waiting for you in your inbox every morning, as well as access to all of Music Ally's industry-leading reports, head on over to musically.com/subscribe. Indie labels, artist managers, employees of CMOs, or publishers might also be eligible for one of our sponsored complimentary subscriptions as well. So that's, again, musically.com/subscribe. Okay, let's return to Dorothy. What does accountability look like at this scale? And what actions should the large music companies, whether it's major labels or whoever, be taking right now to make these changes?
Okay, so if a man is accused of sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape, battery, usually the companies, they hire someone to investigate the claim, which we need to do because we can't accuse somebody falsely and ruin a man's reputation. That's not what the foundation is about. That's not what I want. Reputation is the, basis for any person's career. If the man is found to have done wrongdoing in terms of sexual harassment and abuse, and it's found, this man should be fired immediately without compensation. Right now, sometimes when men get fired, walking out with 10 million, 20 million. Why are we paying contracts? Every single contract has a morality clause in it. If you break it, the shareholder shouldn't have to pay for it. But they're saying, oh, well, then we'll NDA him. We don't have to hear. People are ready for this conversation. They're ready to hear it. So that's number one. If a woman brings forth a charge, she shouldn't be fired. The man leaves. I don't care if he's running the whole company.
What else does the foundation provide for women in the music industry, for instance? And what are you doing to support them and help make a change?
Well, right now, the foundation is set up to hear women have a safe space to speak about their harassment or abuse, where it's not going to get back to anyone. That's number one. Number two, the foundation is also lobbying on behalf of these legislative bills in New York and California. I've contacted the governor, the head of the assembly people, speaking with legislatures to tell them how important this bill is, because so many women have been left out of the process of being able to have a claim against these companies and have recourse. Because when you're sexually assaulted or abused or harassed, as it's happening, like with me, it's almost like you can't believe it. It's so traumatic. When somebody touches you inappropriately, it's so shocking that sometimes you can't process it and you get PTSD. And as we've been having all these conversations about mental health, women get traumatized, they leave the business. And to me, it's the saddest thing because we're losing talented executives, whether they're men or women. And some men leave due to harassment as well. So we don't want to make it a man, woman. It happens to both sexes, just differently. The abuse occurs in a different fashion. So that's what the foundation is doing. And then I am putting together legal resources for people to not have to pay attorneys to help file claims if in statute and if the laws pass, if it's out of statute, to help these women ask to be let out of their NDAs, asked to, file a suit if it's in statute, help women like the two young women that came to me about a man currently running a company.
I will put next to the podcast your contact details so people can get in touch if this is resonating with them and they'll be able to contact you. I'll put that next to the podcast. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who are thinking, this is terrible and I don't want to be part of it and I want to be part of the change. So some of these people who are listening are perhaps in a position of authority where they can, in a music industry, a business where they can actually push change through. And perhaps some people listening feel like they don't quite have as much leverage. What are some actionable steps that they can take immediately to help not just not be part of the problem, but to be part of the solution?
Well, I would think if someone comes to you in a company or you're a producer, a songwriter, and a woman or a man comes to you with the report of a rape and assault, don't discourage the woman and say that you're finished. Step up and help this person, as I've had to step up and help people. Don't walk away from them. It's a human life. We need action And we need some of these men to get the fuck out of this business.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks ever so much, Dorothy.
Thank you so much for everything. It was great.
So again, thanks to Dorothy for joining us on the podcast. And as a reminder, there is a selection of important links beneath the podcast or around it, wherever you're listening to it, that will take you to, first of all, her foundation, but also some contextual news stories that connect to what she was saying throughout the podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, please do. It's joe@musically.com. And don't forget, we also have a free weekly email called The Knowledge, which rounds up bits and pieces of the best analysis, news, marketing insight, and skills that Music Ally publishes. Links are in the description as ever. So that's it from me, Joe Sparrow, this time. Thank you for joining us on the Music Ally Focus podcast. And until next time, farewell.